Today's video features a chat with Geoff from Fluent American. When I found Geoff, I had just had to have him on the show because until now, I hadn't found anyone in my field doing things in a similar way to me. I didn't know this before, but we had a surprisingly similar background and our views now on how we want to help people and how we're running our business. But here's the thing, at one point, Geoff gives us a tour of his studio. And if you normally listen to my podcast in the audio-only version, you might, just for today, want to check out the video version on YouTube to actually see his studio. It's really cool because you can look around and see how he sets things up. But I want to tell you, this is not really an episode about technology or using technology as a teacher, but it's really a discussion of how anyone could get to where we are, even if they don't know much about technology in the beginning, like you might be. So especially if you're an English teacher listening to this, I hope you find this episode really inspires you to get started in taking your teaching to a wider audience. I'm Bianca, your personal American accent coach, and I'm here to help you master an American accent in English because your voice is your choice when it comes to how you sound. I release a podcast episode every 2 weeks, so you should subscribe to whatever podcast platform you use so that you don't miss any new episodes. And by the way, if you want to see the full video version of the episode, it's available at Accent Coach Bianca on YouTube. So, well, thanks so much, Geoff, for joining me. I'm really excited to meet you in person. I've been following you for a little while, and you're really killing it. So thanks a lot for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the kind words.
So first, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got started, what your background is, and then today we're going to talk a little bit about how we're both using tech for teaching. And to me, it was really interesting to find you because most people that I know don't really put as much into their production and things what we're doing. And also it's even rarer, I think, to find somebody in our field who's doing that. So I'm really excited to talk to you today and have that be shared with a lot of people. But first, give us your history and your start and how did you come to be doing these things?
So undergrad, I was an English major for lit and then also an Italian major as well. So I studied abroad. I have experience learning languages. I reached about C1, C2 for people who used to European framework for Italian. And then I got my master's degree in ESL in around 2010. And that's also when I started teaching. I started at a language center domestically in the US. I was a teacher. I served as an academic director for a couple years at a language center. I was an IELTS examiner for speaking and writing tests. I then went back to just teaching. And as I was teaching at language centers, I also started teaching on the side online. So that was my first foray into online teaching. That's probably around like 2016, 2017 or so, which turned out to be very fortunate because you're familiar with ESL. And ESL is one of the fields that is very quickly impacted by things that are happening globally. So if oil prices go up or they go down, I guess it's the better example. You lose your Middle Eastern markets, your Brazilian markets, things like that. If the dollar gets stronger, you lose in other markets. So pre-pandemic, basically had to close a lot of centers for the school I was looking at. So in a lot of ways, it was very beneficial that I was online because I basically just switched everything there because you can't just find another language center because they're all shutting down. And yeah, so I was doing like just general teaching, and then I kind of over time was like, I think I want to focus a little bit more on pronunciation related things. It's a topic that a lot of teachers aren't necessarily covering. It's also a topic that's really dominated for the people that are doing it. There's very heavy presence from like female instruction for pronunciation, not a whole lot of like males in the field. So just trying to give that additional perspective as well. It was something that I focused a lot on when I was studying Italian. It's when I was the academic director, we started our program's first pronunciation course. So that's been the thing that we've been really geared towards now. So that's a 2-minute summary.
Yeah, I feel like we have really similar trajectories in the past. Like I was probably getting my master's in TESOL about the same time as you. I worked for a lot of language schools as well. So I'm coming from an ESL background and also always saw the need of like more pronunciation for myself, for students, for the schools that I was working for, all of that. And maybe very similar to you, I had already started working online when the pandemic hit, and I was working physically in a school as well, because I'm now here in Mexico and I was working for a high school there. And yeah, it was just perfect timing to say, oh, I guess we're making this shift now. And when I was in my master's program, I was doing my master's online. So back in that at that time, 2010, whenever that was, I was like one of the only people I knew who was doing any masters online. And now it's just par for the course. And people didn't used to know what Zoom was. And so many things changed so quickly that, especially in the pandemic, right? You turned around and suddenly all the teachers had to scramble and figure out what Zoom was and how do I share my screen? It was such a thing, but maybe we were a little bit ahead of the game. But now I feel like we're both really ahead of the game. So I wanted to talk to you about what you specifically have found useful, what you're doing exactly, what you can offer people, how you find that your approach maybe is different in that way, because I feel like we're similar in the idea that I think learning should be an experience, right? And well, the more of an experiential learning experience you have, then the more memorable it's going to be. And one of those ways is really just being live with people. There's so many asynchronous things that you can do, and that's increased a lot as well with the availability of what's online, but just being present, it's such a thing. So I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about what your approach is like and what you find is important in how you're doing this teaching.
So I think one of the trademarks that separates a lot of our videos from other English channels out there, I'm going to target YouTube specifically right now,
Mm.
and maybe focus on two different domains, focusing on videos on demands, like your long form videos versus streams, because those are just two different kinds of approaches, but also things that interconnect as well. So with our videos on demand, I think one of the things that I really tried to push to separate myself from other channels is when you look at a lot of the instructional videos that channels are making, they
Mm.
tend to be very much talking head, as in, here I am, I'm going to have maybe some text graphic over here.
Mm.
And that's pretty much it. It's going to be pretty static camera, one shot. If there's editing, it's going to be just cuts. So you're going to get a lot of kind of jump cuts where I'm going to be here and I'm going to be here
Mm.
and I'm going to
Mm.
be here. And so not a whole lot of attention paid to editing. Whereas the videos I was producing, a lot more preparing scripts, moving the camera around, including a lot more visual elements to also incorporate storytelling, things like that, in addition to going over the grammar points. Basically, just trying to capture what you mentioned about an experience,
Mm.
because the learning's important, but I want to make sure you have to be able to retain attention as well. And
Mm.
so that was something that we really focused on. And then that also carries over to the live streams too, because the live streams, you have to be thinking about things like microphone sound. You have to be thinking about internet connection. You have to be thinking about things like lighting. Can people see you well? Because I think the production quality, you can't just approach the stream as, this is the stream that I'm doing for 15 minutes, a half hour, an hour, and then that's it. Especially
Mm.
if you're thinking YouTube, because there's the replay value. There's people that are going to find it afterwards, especially in the field of ESL. You're able to hit all the time zones, because whenever someone's going to sleep, other people are waking up. And so making sure that you have content that is able to deliver for all those people, whether it's live or afterwards, by necessity, I think requires paying attention to the production value.
And would you say that you were just self-taught and learned as you go? Because that's what I've been doing. Is I was not a person who was really into technology, and I break everything I touch. So for me, it's been such a process to learn. And oh, now I have this new piece of hardware, and now I have this
Mhm.
software, and it's just been a continual thing for me. And I wonder if that's something you have always had interest in, or you found that's been a hurdle. Tell me a little bit about that.
Nope, self-taught.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way to go. Every day you just pick up a new skill. My
Mm.
first videos are still out there. They're pretty bad. The content, the way I approach it is, the content itself is good,
Yeah.
but the delivery, if I had to do it today, would be very different. And I
Mm.
think that when you pick it up on your own, the process certainly is slower, but it's also in some ways more impactful, because you understand the reasoning for why you're using this technique, or why you need to focus on lighting, because you know what bad lighting is, because you had bad lighting, or you know what bad sound is, because you had bad sound, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that,
Mm-hmm.
or the difference between a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone, or things like that, just from picking up background noise and
Yeah, yeah,
all
you figure it
those
out.
fun
along
parts
the
of
way.
production. Yeah.
Maybe much like speaking, right? Like I know like when you're speaking your language at first or second language or third language or whatever at first, you have that cringe factor and you don't want to record yourself, but you really should, because when you look back on it later, you're going to see how much progress you've made. So important to keep those old videos that are never going to die out there, but to just take a look at them once in a while and just pat yourself in the back and see how far you've come. Because yeah, I was just thinking that just yesterday, because my roommate is actually he does video production for animation. And so of course, like compared to him, I know nothing still. And I don't know if you use a Stream Deck. I just got a Stream Deck and I'm like, woohoo, like leveling
I
up my
do.
game. And I was just, figuring it out yesterday. And my roommate came home and I'm like, look what I did, look what I did. And I was like, man, I thought you'd be more impressed. He's, oh, I'm always impressed that you're learning these things. And maybe I don't say it enough. And then I felt like really validated, because I was like, yeah, because I work really hard on this and it doesn't come easy to me, but I've recognized the value in it. And that hard work, I think, has been paying off a little bit for myself and also for I think for our clients, because when they're more engaged, they're more ready to maybe take, how should I say this? They're ready to take chances that they might not otherwise do. There's a better connection between the people if you can establish that. And I feel like that's one way that we're both really doing that. And I love how you're doing that, especially with your live groups. And I just wanted to first say congratulations. Nobody's patting us on the back much except ourselves. So let's take a moment and give ourselves a
Yes.
good job.
Likewise. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So here's a question. I was just mentioning, oh yeah, I just got this Stream Deck the other day. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what kind of hardware, software that you're using out there, things that maybe you've thrown out the window and haven't really liked, and things that you really couldn't live without now, and that might help some of the teachers that would be listening to this right now decide on some equipment that they might want to buy or software?
Yeah, sure. Yes, welcome to my studio. Okay,
Yay!
so there's my Stream Deck. I'm not sure how you're using yours. I wish I could do more things with it, especially with regards to editing. Like if there was like a pan button, that would be huge. But so mine is mostly for like sound effects. So for instance, if I'm saying something and then I want to add something, I can just add a quick little sound. There's my soundboard. So I use a Rodecaster. I have a second monitor that I can. There's a pen I can use with it, so I can write on that if I'm doing some classes and things like that. Back there, so I basically have two lights. So I have that one there, and then I have another one there. And you can see my camera right there too. So basically that allows me to, if I'm shooting like a video on demand, I can basically have two studios, right? So I can face this way or I can face this way. So just it keeps things
Fresh.
simpler. I would say if you're making videos, try to set it up so you can just do things as fast as possible without moving stuff around. I used to just have one light. It was huge. I would have to move it over there and then move it back, and that got annoying. Those lights are being held up by, I forget what they're called. It's like some sort of pole. I forget the name of it.
Oh,
Basically,
yeah. You mounted them
it's
from
exactly, yeah, exactly. So it's held up there by tension. So then I can just string the light to it. So tech wise, those are the main things that I'm using pretty much all the time. In terms of microphone, I'm using a Shure microphone. This is MV7, which is not the SM7B. That's the fancier one. This is the USB version. And then you got the arm. I think in terms of tech, that kind of covers it. I'm going to give you back.
Perfect. Let's get us
This is great.
And yeah,
Gotcha.
worth it saying that if somebody's listening to this podcast now on the audio version, you might want to go over to YouTube and watch the quick video version just to see the tour, because we couldn't really, how should we say, we couldn't really talk about that in the same way.
What's on your shirt, by the way? I see the IPA.
You know what? On my shirt, it says Master an American Accent. And
there you go. Okay.
Yeah, it says Master an American Accent. And I've got a couple T-shirts that have some IPA writing on it in secret code.
Got you.
And yeah, it's super fun. So you can wear those around. And I don't know if you find that using IPA is helpful to you. I know, because I've gotten a little bit of flack. I got a lot of pushback in the beginning when I was doing videos and I was adding IPA. And now that's totally normal. I see a lot of people are doing it these days. And I feel, oh, that's really nice, because now I feel like most people are learning more as they watch more videos. If you see one video and it's got some kind of secret code, then it's really difficult unless you're part of that community. But the more people do this, the easier it becomes, I think, for everybody. So I don't know what your stance is on IPA versus phonetic respelling or coming up with your own code or anything like that. Maybe you can talk to your system a little bit more and your kind of philosophies about how you do these things.
Got you. Yeah. I think I don't have an issue with the American IPA. I know some people do, but I'm personally okay with it. I don't ever require like students to memorize or anything
Mm,
like that. One of the things that I often do early on with students is we do a pronunciation test kind of early, just to identify the specific sounds we want to target moving forward.
mm,
So that has the IPA. I basically just tell students, look, you don't need to memorize this. You're going to see it
mm.
in some of the documents we use. So you might just get used to seeing the symbols over time. That's how I
Right.
learned it. I didn't sit down and memorize it. It's just from doing it for 15 years. You just get used to it.
Yep.
I think, though, one of the things that really separates my personal approach from for pronunciation from other teachers is I see a lot of teachers very focused on mouth position things, and the
Mm,
IPA is great for that because you
yeah.
really correlate those individual symbols with mouth position.
Mm,
But what I've found is that, and I don't know if this speaks to anything in your experience too. Like I would have some students who they would have the textbook mouth position, but the sounds they were producing were still accented, noticeably
mm,
not
mhm,
this the same as what native speakers would do. And so this is something I really started diving more into, let's say maybe 4 years ago or so. And I really started asking myself, why is this? And so that's morphed into my approach with pronunciation. So basically, I'm especially focused on four key pronunciation components. I'm
mhm.
really interested in placement,
Yeah.
as in where you're projecting sound from. I'm very interested in breath, as in
Mm,
trying to make sure we're using our diaphragm enough. A lot of students coming in are reliant on their lungs to produce a lot of sounds versus their diaphragm. So trying to get used to engaging that element of their body in order to get a little bit more warmth and resonance. Because in
mhm,
general, I think American English really likes that, especially
mm,
compared to other forms of English. We're also taking a look at pitch patterns,
mhm,
making sure that when you're moving from thought group to thought group, are you adjusting your pitch? Are you, if I give you like a 4 syllable word, the stress is on the first syllable, are you able to navigate those pitches enough so there's enough contrast? So elements that relate to pitch. And then lastly, just trying to make sure that your vowel sounds are strong enough, because a lot of students are coming in with backgrounds where the vowel sounds are getting reduced, the consonant sounds are getting strengthened. In many
mhm.
ways, in my opinion, American English is really trying to do the opposite.
Oh, yeah,
So in those aspects, the IPA I think is a helpful tool, but
yeah.
it's not necessarily one that we're using, especially once we've gone through the individual sounds that I want
Mhm, mhm.
students to focus. How about for your own teaching? How are you finding the IPA useful?
When I first discovered IPA was actually when I was in university and I was taking a French phonetics course because I decided I would be a French major after I came back from France. And I took this French phonetics course and it just blew my mind originally, right when I saw it. I'm like, "Oh my god, these are the keys to the castle. This is going to just unlock all the secrets and all the languages." And obviously, it's amazing and it's wonderful. As you said, it's lacking. It's not the complete story, and I love using it when it's helpful to somebody, right? There are definitely people who it just doesn't resonate with them, right? It's overload, maybe it doesn't quite correspond, maybe they're just not a visual kind of thinker, but for people who it works for, it really works for. And like you, I don't really push it. I don't require anybody to use it. I use it myself because I know that they're going to see that when they maybe go to the dictionary or in other places. So I use it. But I also tell people if it's working for you, pick it up. If it's not, just leave it, put it down, and
Mhm.
that's fine. So, like you said, through repetition, through exposure, there's certain symbols, there's certain sounds that they're just gonna they're just going to be more salient over time, and they're going to really see that, like that short I sound, right? And whenever they see that, they're like, oh, that's the one that I always get wrong. So I do love the IPA. I love using it. And I also like how it creates community in a way that jargon does. If
Mhm.
you're in any kind of group of people, any kind of fandom or anything like that, you've got your own little language. And I feel like that connects people. So once they learn it, they also have this connection with other people who know a couple symbols. So I think it's really nice to create community, which is another thing that I was going to ask you about too in a minute. But I wanted to go back to the idea of the four things that you said, because a lot
Mhm.
of people don't focus on breathing. And when they get to the end of the sentence, they can't even finish a sentence. Because to me, that also, there's a connection there between breathing and rhythm. And you were mentioning like syllable stress too. And how can I work on my pitch and kind of separate the systems of how is syllable stress related and different to word stress versus rhythm versus intonation? I think a lot of those things just get either ignored completely by most people, And because let's be honest, it's not low hanging fruit. It's difficult to teach those things. It's difficult to really get them. So I love that you're into that too, into more of the prosody angle of things, because I think that's where real communication happens. And I think that's where real connection can be made. You know, I think, like you were saying, the articulation, the placement of the tongue, that can all be textbook, but it doesn't, and it doesn't mean that you're really going to click with somebody in what you're saying. So to me, I'm right there with you with all those things too. And I have found that most people are doing videos on enunciation and pronunciation. And for me, I found like that's a way to really reach people because that's what they're looking for. Obviously, they don't even know about this other stuff. And sometimes it comes on too strong and you're like, whoa, I'm just here to pronounce some words, and it scares people away. But once people are interested, they say, oh, this is so interesting. And they just keep going down the rabbit hole. So I think that there's a segment of people out there that are interested in what we're doing too, and not just, let's say, the simple pronunciation videos of, oh, this is how you hold your mouth. But I think there's a place for all of these things. Like when we were saying, oh, there's the live stream, oh, there's the long format videos, oh, maybe there's the reels, right? And I feel like each thing has its own place in like today's media world. And one of those things is the streaming. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you enjoy about your streaming process, maybe what challenges it has, because I think that's an area where we can merge both, right? We've got the tech and we've got the community building aspect there. So can you tell us a little bit more about like your streaming and what you're doing there?
For sure. Yeah, we're doing every day. We're probably doing about an hour to an hour and a half worth of streaming. This is because on the main channel, I have a stream that I do every morning, 8 a.m. It's called Wake Up American. And so it's basically the intention is to give people just that daily pronunciation practice, because you take a day off from language learning, you feel it. So our goal is to really try to not let people encounter that sort of situation. So we're covering different topics. That's usually about a 10 to 15-minute stream on the channel. And then in addition to that, I have a small group coaching program called Mission English. So we have every Monday through Friday, we have a daily pronunciation stream called Wake Up American. It's basically to give people a chance just to get, your 5, 10, 15 minutes of pronunciation practice in for the day on different topics related to American English accents. And then in addition to that, I have a small group program called Mission English. For Mission English, we're meeting at different time zones. So we're either meeting at 9:30 in the morning or 1:30 p.m. New York time, or we're meeting at 8 p.m. New York time. And basically, I guarantee students, hey, if you're in the program, I'll be streaming at these times. We're going to do at least 30 sessions a month. Typically, we're doing more than that. And then you can come to as many sessions as you want. And so basically, that's a lot. That's basically, again, like I said, about an hour and a half of streaming every day. In terms of platforms that we're using, the streams themselves are hosted on YouTube. There was a time we had them also hosted on Facebook, and also through different like webinar formats. We're using StreamYard for that. And in terms of streaming, in some ways, there's some components that are similar to traditional long form videos. If you're thinking YouTube, you have to be thinking thumbnail, video description. So basically, even before a stream goes live, you have to set aside 20, 30 minutes just to get the thumbnail prepared and get the video description. If you can do that the day before, that's better. For the private small group stuff, you don't have to necessarily worry about that as much. But then in addition to that, you're hoping that all the tech works good. You're hoping the internet is strong today. There's things that you don't always control. You're hoping that your settings stay the same. I'm sure you've encountered it. Sometimes you'll do a stream, you'll turn it off, you'll come back an hour later to do another stream, and all the settings have completely changed. And it's like, I didn't touch anything. I don't know why that's like that. Making sure that your microphone's coming in correctly. So for instance, I'm using a program called Voice Meter because I want to get audio we have a Stream Deck with sound effects in addition to our soundboard. So I need something that can take in multiple inputs. So Voice Meter is the thing I'm using, but then you have to make sure that when you're on your streaming platform that the audio is synced to the right source and not synced to my headphones or not synced to the desktop speakers and things like that. So it's just, you're constantly double checking everything. You're making sure that the camera is set to the right camera. You're making sure your background's looking the way it needs to look. It's
troubleshooting.
And then troubleshooting. And the reality is that things are going to go wrong at some point. If you're live streaming, that's just part of the process. So the question is, what are you preparing for those times when things don't work. So, for
Yeah.
instance, on StreamYard, you can upload videos. So, if I'm having a tech issue, if the internet's slow and I need to restart my computer, I can play a video
Hmm.
that's just like it's basically just like a time saver. So I don't lose my
Mhm.
viewers,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can restart my computer. And as I'm
Mhm.
restarting my computer, they can watch that video. And then when I
Mhm.
come back, that's there. So I don't have to make a new stream and
Oh,
things like that.
nice. You
So
try to get
it's
them all.
always try to have your plan, always have plan Bs.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
have to have plan Bs ready, and you can't freak out if things go wrong. It's just like,
It doesn't help.
camera's not working. Okay, worst comes, I showed you guys the camera. Like, I can always just use my webcam if something's
Mhm.
going wrong.
Mhm.
If my one microphone's not working, I have another microphone I can use. So
Mm.
having
Mhm.
backups, being able and knowing how to switch between them as smoothly and quickly as possible without freaking out
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah. And I think too, something that you mentioned kind of ties in with that is the frequency with which you're going live and doing these things. It makes you more comfortable. It makes you realize
mm,
that nothing's the end of the world, and it really just helps you to realize what the problem is, because maybe this time it's this problem, but next time it's the other problem. But you already know because you've already gone through that first problem, and you get your troubleshooting down a little bit too. So I wanted to mention that it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. The thing we do it every day, and we do it for you guys who are listening. So just know that we love you. And I imagine, I don't want to speak for you, but I imagine we both really believe that this is the way to reach people these days, is to just do it more often, go live. You mentioned scheduling and how you were thinking about world time zones, and that was something I always had a problem with how other people were doing things,
mm,
was because you can't, there's no perfect time, right, for what we do, because everyone's always
there's not.
asleep, somebody's awake, somebody's at work, somebody's dropping their kids off, right? It's just a really hard thing to do scheduling. So I've had to do something similar, in that I've just had to open up multiple sessions and say whoever can come at these times, like, here, it's open for you, come as much or as little as you want. And I really think that's another way to go that I'm hoping will be more popular, instead of, oh, everybody has to come on Saturday, and for me it's 11 o'clock because that's convenient for me, but that's not going to be convenient in most of the world. So I think we have to be more flexible in how we do those things, and how, what can we do that's live, what can we do that's asynchronous, how can all that stuff come together. So I feel like it's really interesting, and I haven't seen anybody who's
Mhm.
doing kind of similar things. So I was really excited to find all the things that you were doing, and I'm really glad that you were able to come and talk today, because I don't get the chance to vent about these things with other people, or really talk about the tech as well. And you mentioned a lot of tech things. So, what would
So
you know? Absolutely. That's why I wanted you here. I wanted to talk about, what are you doing? What am I doing? Because it's fun to nerd out with these things with other people.
mhm,
And I have a little group of teachers who we call it Accent Teachers Academy, where I'm trying to teach them how to do what we do, right? How do you go from being an
mhm.
English teacher to being an accent coach or pronunciation coach or whatever you want to call it? And because we know there's a lot of sides to this that you have to consider. So we always talk about these things, and I would love to get your take on, not four different microphones, not I have three cameras and my light is set up on a pole and this is how I've got two angles. How would you suggest somebody get started with this kind of thing?
Mhm.
Besides
Yeah.
the just jump in and just do it kind of thing,
Mhm.
start messy.
Yep.
Something
Yep.
specific.
And we're assuming like video content.
Yeah, yeah, we're definitely assuming video content.
Okay. So I'll just walk you through how I started. When I started, I was just using a webcam.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, like a
Mm-hmm.
This is like a Logitech
Yeah.
thing. If
Those are
that doesn't
bought
work, you
somewhere.
can use yeah, right. If that doesn't work, you can use the camera on your laptop,
Mm-hmm.
because something is better than nothing. And people are
Mm.
actually very tolerant of video. They are not tolerant of bad audio, but they will
Mm.
tolerate some video that's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So most likely, whatever you have for video is already okay
Mm.
to get
Mm.
started until you
Mm-hmm.
decide how much you want to start investing.
Mm.
The first investment though you probably really want to make is a microphone. A very common choice is a snowball, like a was it Yeti or whatever. That's a really common microphone people use to get started. The thing I would encourage you to be mindful of is noise and background noise. You want your audio to be as good as possible, and a lot of times the Yeti microphones just they pick up everything. If my furnace turns on, it's going to pick that up. If someone's walking upstairs, it's going to pick that up. It's good
Mm.
for what it is. They're relatively cheap microphones. They're well known, but they do pick up noise. In some ways, honestly, a headset mic might actually get you some better
Right.
quality,
Yeah,
honestly.
totally.
And it also gives you more flexibility too, because if you ever, for instance, have guests on or things like that, you already have the headphones as well. So
Mm.
In some ways, that might actually be a better option for some people. But once that, like I would say, once you have those things, get your microphone, decide what you're doing for your camera, just shoot videos, make a lot of bad videos, watch your bad videos over and over again, and decide what you want to change. I think also just having a model, find an English teacher that online who's doing something that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
watch a lot of what they're doing. And
Mm.
it doesn't even have to be an English teacher, actually. It could be any, watch a channel, any YouTube channel who's doing, you just their editing style, and start to just get ideas about what you could do with your own videos. I think it's important to also look at content that's not specifically, teaching
Oh yeah,
related.
100%. Especially I feel like in our field, especially the older the video is, they're all quite homogenous, right? It's all like a guy with a
There.
whiteboard, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like if that's not what your goal is, maybe look outside the field to see who's doing something in a style maybe that you really, yeah, and maybe it's the editing. And one thing I wanted to say too is not the maybe post-production editing, but I think that's one of the things that maybe where we're both also getting better at, I can speak for myself, is
Mm,
doing things live and increasing the production value as we're doing it. So what you just mentioned with the
mhm,
cameras and the viewpoints and things like that, because I noticed that in your live stream, you're really conscious of just switching it up and just changing the
mhm,
camera angle and keeping people interested visually too, and not, as you
mhm.
just said, a talking head kind of person. So yeah, I would ask you a little bit about
That's
that and say maybe what are your favorite, let's say,
mhm,
scenes are you using? Because this is miles ahead of where most people are going to start, but
mm,
where people might want to get to. So, what are you using right now besides your hardware? What software
mhm.
are you using? For example, maybe for your editing, for your streaming. Besides Streamyard,
Mhm,
like what else do you use?
mhm. Gotcha. Yeah. So, in part of, just to touch on a point. So, when I'm doing a live stream, I want that. I don't have time to edit everything right now. A lot of my energy isn't on my main channel creating like long form videos.
Mm-hmm.
So the daily live streams I do are a way for me to keep the channel active, keep people engaged while I focus on other projects.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're looking for like video on demand, I'm not. I don't make as many right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I'll come back to in the future, but that's not the focus right now. So
Mm-hmm.
my goal is like when I'm doing a stream, I need to make it as high production value as possible
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to come back and edit it later, at least
Yep.
not right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we're doing different angles. We're moving things. Those are called like pattern disrupts because basically every 8-10 seconds
Mm-hmm.
shifting viewpoints and things like that just helps to re-engage your viewer.
Yeah.
So I'm doing as much of that during the stream itself so that way I don't have to go back and edit it intensively later.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of software, so again, I'm using StreamYard. One of the reasons I use StreamYard for the plan that I have, again, it allows multiple cameras at once that I can switch across. If you're interested in a platform like StreamYard, but you don't feel like paying for the higher tier, what you can also do is you can send yourself a link as a
Mm-hmm.
guest and you can join with your phone. So your phone, that's something in my earlier streams, I was just joining as a guest with my phone. So my
Mm-hmm.
phone would be my second angle
Ah, I
as
see.
opposed to having it uploaded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's one option. In terms of editing, sound editing, Audacity.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, for most of what I
Mm-hmm.
imagine your viewers and listeners are going to need, Audacity is fine.
Yeah.
If you're doing like a lot of like music layering and things like that, there's other programs that are better. But for
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing, even just like basic podcasting,
Yeah.
Audacity's free.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to it, but even if you just use Audacity for the noise reduction features, even just doing that
Mm-hmm.
really ups the quality of your sound. If you want to take it next level, the next thing I would study after noise reduction is I would study probably like noise gates. So that
Mm-hmm.
way,
Mm-hmm.
if you have let's say you have your air conditioner or your furnace and you're like, man, this is constantly in my audio. It's not like super loud, but it's always present. And I want to take that away. A noise gate can take that away if it's
Mm-hmm.
not potentially. So learning how to use those settings. In terms of video itself, the big things I'm using, I use Movavi for my video. It's beginner friendly, but also has a lot of the relatively advanced stuff. It's not like Premiere, but
Yeah.
for everything I need,
Mm-hmm.
it's good.
I'm not familiar with
Unless you
that.
do.
Is that for editing or is that for what is that used for?
Yep. So
Mm.
that's for video editing.
Okay.
Yep. do some sound editing. They're adding some stuff. You can do like some basic like background removal and things like that. It's not, again, it's not as advanced as like Premiere, but I think it's relatively equivalent to, I don't know what the word Apple programs like Final Cut,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
DaVinci Resolve. I can do
Mm-hmm.
most of the things that those other programs are doing as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I'm using for video editing. Another program uh, that I downloaded, which it's a subscription, is called Descript.
Oh, I
So
use that.
Descript lets you, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically it allows you to input video. It's good if you're interested in like podcasting, video podcasts. You can
Mm-hmm.
upload the video onto there. It can then add a transcription. You can edit the transcription. So if you want to take out blocks of text, you just erase those words, and then the
Mm-hmm.
video automatically matches that. You can add subtitles to the video.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I would say is that it's not a light program on your computer. So
Yes, yes.
if you have anything that's, I think the laptop I have right now, I really need to upgrade. It's about 8 gigs of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. If you're really invested in video, you really want to have at least 16 gigs of RAM. It's not
Mm-hmm.
ideal. It
Mm-hmm.
works, but it's not ideal.
Yeah.
Anything less than that, I really wouldn't want to do anything on. And the script it's a beefy program, so
Yes.
it can
Yeah.
run a little
And you
slow.
open two windows and you're done, basically. I don't know if
Yeah,
you do that,
I
but
just
it's
I have
multi-window
to close
error.
everything.
Good night. Yeah. Yeah, I've had that trouble too. I do think it's
Yeah.
great though for people who don't come from any kind of editing background because it does
Mhm.
everything is based on that transcript portion, right? So it's more intuitive, I think, for people maybe like me who don't have that other knowledge that they're drawing on.
Mhm.
If you've come from, let's say, a DaVinci Resolve or something like that, then maybe you're actually learning something new, but if you're starting out from zero, I think Descript's a really nice tool. And I believe
Mhm.
they have a free version that it allows you a certain number of hours of transcription per
Mhm.
month. And I quickly went over that. But that's the
Mhm.
one I'm using now. I'm using Descript, and for my recording, I'm using one called Ecamm Live
Mhm.
also.
Oh, you can.
And yeah, that's so I'm still always learning more about that. And I feel like maybe like languages, maybe like teaching, maybe like learning, it's a constant process of evolution and trial and error. And like you said, I think the main point is like language, just do it badly, start messy, and you'll learn from your mistakes, and you'll have models of people who are doing it better than you. You can see where they started.
Mhm.
I think all of this stuff just comes back in on itself, and there's ways to just get started really cheaply and then learn from there. So the last thing I wanted to ask you was what people can do to get involved in your programs. You've got your live stream for the general public, I think every day. You have this community.
Mhm.
How can people join your community? And also, is there anything else that you're doing that you haven't mentioned yet?
Got you. Yeah, yeah. By the way, for people who, I'm sure you've told people, but for people interested in Ecamm's super powerful. There's so much you can do with it. There's a channel called, I think it's Livestream Pros with Ilaria or Laria, or I forget her name. Luria. I always forget
Mm-hmm.
her name. But she goes heavy on Ecamm and lots of
Mm-hmm.
great stuff. The only thing about Ecamm is it's only for Mac,
Yeah, yeah.
Apple people. So just a
Mm-hmm.
note. But yeah, so all of our services and things like that can be found at fluentamerican.com. So basically, we're trying to make sure pronunciation, whatever point you're in terms of investment for yourself, we're here for you. So the channel, free resources, we're doing free streams. If you want to take that up a notch, we have a group on Telegram, which is at fluentamerican.com/Telegram, where basically every single day of the week, including the weekends, I post a group of words or phrases, and then you can reply with your own audio. So we currently have 4 openings left in the group right now. That's current price point. So that's another option. If you want to take that a step higher, then we have the Mission English program, which is again the daily live streams and the small group classes. We do at least 30 a month. Typically, it's more than that. We also do in that group, we have a pronunciation test that you can retake every other month. So that way you can track your progress and things. All the lessons are saved, so you can rewatch them. In the Facebook group, there's already probably about 350 classes you can watch.
Adds
So if
up,
you join,
doesn't it?
it
Especially if
does
there's
very
all the
quickly.
time.
Yes.
Wow.
So there's that. And then, of course, we have just one-on-one coaching options, including the premier coaching program we have. So people who are interested, for my English students who are interested in creating video content, maybe they're preparing for a meeting. I had one client who's like working in the finance sector in New York. So he had this super big presentation. So basically, it's like working one on one intensively for a 3 week period in general towards a project. So you're trying to create a video, you're trying to create a series of maybe reels or shorts or things like that. We try
Mm-hmm.
to help you make the content, but also in that content, you're using English in a way that you feel comfortable with. So that's
Mhm.
our last program. And all these things, again, are available at fluentamerican.com.
Awesome. Awesome. I love how we're very aligned also in like how we do things too. Like, I don't know who else has a Telegram channel who
Mm-hmm.
does the things like that we do. A lot of English teachers, sure, but not a lot of people who are focusing on pronunciation, accent, voice, things like that. And the fact that we both have these kind of programs that run throughout the week rather than maybe once a week or some very
Mm-hmm.
fixed time, and the way that you're doing the feedback, the way you're doing the live streaming, all of this stuff. I just feel like we're really like in sync, and I just totally
Mm-hmm.
found you by
Mm-hmm.
accident, and I'm super excited to have you come on here and talk to not only our students who might be interested in this, but particularly teachers, English teachers who maybe want to pivot and work in this field as well. I think it's really inspirational for them to see people like us who have just started from nothing and figured out things along the way, and how just you're just killing it, as I was saying earlier. So
I
great to
really
have you come
appreciate that.
on.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Thanks for
and
reaching out. I think that's the other big thing is just collaboration, reaching out. That's really something that's missing.
mm,
We've been very fortunate to work with lots of other channels on YouTube just by reaching out. We work with
mm,
Chris Americos. There's like Maryville Accent. We worked with Tarl Speech, San Diego Voice and Accent, a couple other
mhm,
channels as well. Like it's just reaching out, just asking them, hey, do you want to do stuff? We've reached out to Hadar's team. We haven't
yep,
been able to find something that works, but
mm,
they're always open to it. Maria's team, like Lingua Marina, like
mhm,
a lot of people are
mhm.
very open if you just take the time to reach out, much like you did. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
what you're
Isn't
doing.
that funny too? Because every once in a while you find somebody in this area and they're very much a lone wolf, right? And I think a lot of us are really into the community building or into the collaboration and things like that. And it just makes everything better. And I think some
It
people maybe
does.
have a fear like, oh, they're going to take my clients or they're going to steal my ideas and things like that.
Hmm.
But that's so not the case. I've found in reality, it's people are worried about getting their slice of the pie, but they don't realize that the pie is just getting bigger and bigger. And so there's enough pie out there for everybody. And if we work together, we're so much stronger. So again, thanks for coming on today. It's been great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I want to say thanks to Geoff and thanks to you guys for listening, and reach out to him at Fluent American and let's see how we can collaborate all of us together. That would be fantastic. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much for your time. I greatly
Thanks.
appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
If you found this episode helpful in any way, please subscribe and leave a review. It's actually really helpful to me. Now, before I go, I have 2 tasks for you to do. First, I want you to register and come to my free monthly masterclass. They're on the last Thursday of the month. In just 1 hour, you're going to master a specific American accent skill. For example, the TH sound or rhythm. The Zoom registration link actually changes each month. So the second and maybe more important thing I want to ask you to do is to sign up for my mailing list, because you're going to get the registration link each month and you're going to get bonus materials before and after the masterclass that I only send to my email list subscribers. The email opt-in link is down in the show notes. Be sure to sign up for my mailing list and come to the monthly masterclass for free. I'm Bianca, your personal American accent coach, and I want you to know that your voice is your choice. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.